Welcome to Musical Orbit's session on Feldenkrais with Emma Alter. Emma is a very well-known professional violinist and viola player, but also a Feldenkrais teacher. Emma, tell us, how did you come about to be doing Feldenkrais, teaching Feldenkrais?
Well, I actually discovered it on a music course myself, having no real idea of what it was. And it was during the lunch break in this course. And so I went along with a friend. We had no idea what we were letting ourselves in for. And we lay down on the floor, because these were floor lessons, and made these very tiny movements. And then at the end of the session, I walked out in a completely different way, as if I was a different person walking. Like it wasn't my walk. And so I went back because this was very curious for me and also very interesting. And then after a while, I realized, oh, this had real possibilities to improve the way I moved and walked myself. And also at the beginning, I wasn't really thinking so much about playing, but also to improve the way I played the viola.
Fantastic. So you're going to give us a demonstration today, well, a demonstration of how a class would feel and how it might help. And we're
Yeah.
very grateful to our volunteers, Jenny, Rachel and Sue, who've joined us today to experience Feldenkrais with you. And at the end, you'll have the opportunity to ask Emma any questions you like, ladies. So over to you, Emma.
Thank you. Great. So today's lesson is going to be in sitting. So if you'd like to get a chair, if you're not already on a chair, and just give yourself room so that you're not kind of in behind a table. And if you could bring your bottom to the front of the chair, so you've got your 2 feet flat on the floor, ideally with no shoes on, if you can. And if you've got glasses on, if you wouldn't mind taking those off, you won't need them for what we're doing. So I'm not going to demonstrate per se, I'm going to talk you through. And one of the reasons I think it's very important that we do something like Feldenkrais as musicians, because our body is our primary instrument, whether we're a singer or whether we're an instrumentalist, that it's all about how we move in order to do what it is that we're doing, which in our case is obviously making sound. And so when we improve the way that we can sense and move ourselves, we can then improve and the way that we play or sing. And hopefully you will feel that today yourself. Do you have your instruments close to hand? No. Are there something you could get easily or?
Yeah, can I just nip and get it?
Yeah, sure. One of the things I find that when I'm working with musicians, if we start and we end with playing, then actually it makes it so much more immediately relevant to what it is that you do. So what I'd like you to do is just to spend a couple of minutes playing. Yeah, sorry, I just should get your reeds out. Apologies, I should have thought that earlier. Um, and whilst you're playing, would you see whether you can bring some of your attention to what it is that you do with your shoulders, how you use your shoulders or move your shoulders as you play? Yeah. So you can get up and you can stand if you're a standing player, if that's more comfortable for you, or obviously you can stand sitting, whatever's most like your normal playing position. Okay. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to do that. Lovely. Then if you'd like to just pop your instrument down, we'll come back to it at the end, so somewhere safe. And come back to your chair, put your 2 feet flat on the floor in front of you. We're just going to start with raising one shoulder just a little bit, so upwards towards the ceiling, and then just bring it back in a really small way. Great. It doesn't need to be your whole range of movement. In fact, it's better if it's just the easy range of shoulder. Just repeat that movement a couple of times. Just see how easy is it, how fluid is the movement. Or perhaps it's not fluid, perhaps there are like little speed bumps in the way when you lift up the shoulder. Okay. And is it only the shoulder that's moving, or can you feel perhaps your collarbone moving at the front? Do your ribs move? Okay, and let's compare that with the other shoulder, your second shoulder, whichever one that is for you. So you just raise that shoulder a little. Is it as easy as the first shoulder, or did you choose your more flexible side? So, and the idea is that we really stay in our physical comfort zone with this. So you're not going to be pushing, it's not like a gym class, you're not going to be pushing to go as far as you can. We're using the movement in order to explore how you move and to improve your awareness of what it is that you do with your shoulders. So whenever you're moving, stay within your very comfortable range. If it starts to hurt, stop. And then we can make the movement smaller, slower, less frequent, or indeed if it's still hurting, even if you make it microscopic, we can do this in your imagination. And because it's not an exercise, because we're retraining your brain, then you'll still have a really useful effect from this. So let's start with your easiest shoulder, whichever one that was for you. And we're just going to lift and lower your shoulder once more. But this time I'd like you to bring your second hand and find the internal end of your collarbone. If you've got a little jugular notch at the base of your throat, and you'll feel that just next to that, there's something, it's the collarbone that's moving. Can you feel that? And then gradually, just gently take your fingers along the collarbones, maybe some on the front side of the collarbone, some on the top side of the collarbone, as you raise and lower your shoulder. So we all tend to think of the shoulder as the point at the corner of ourselves, but actually, anatomically, a shoulder is really made up of three main bones. The collarbone, which you've got your finger on now, and you're just going to work your way outwards to the edge of yourself towards the shoulder joint as you just raise and lower the shoulder. And then, of course, you've got the arm bone, which you're lifting. I'm sure you can feel your elbows lifting in space as you take the shoulder up and down. And these might feel very obvious, and for many, for some people it is very obvious. Oh, well, of course, this is what happens. But if we don't have an anatomical knowledge, then it can be hard to sense. So if you work your way out to the ends, and actually what you'll find is in this area, just next to the end of your arm bone, is a little spur that sticks out from your shoulder blade, and that's the third piece of your shoulder trinity, if you like. So it's your collarbone, the upper arm bone, and your shoulder blade at the back. Whenever you want to lift your shoulder, you're actually needing to move all three of those bones. So if we can have a more three-dimensional image of that can really help us know what it is that we're doing. Okay, great. So bring that arm down. Just pause for a moment and see whether even with that small amount of movement, if there's any difference in the way that shoulder rests. Perhaps you can compare it to the second one. And let's explore just a slightly different movement of that shoulder. So can you lower the shoulder downwards towards your pelvis? So we're going to use the same side to start with. And again, just what's comfortable for you, what's easy for you. Can you bring your attention to the back of yourself and feel how that your shoulder blade slides down your ribs? If it's easy for you to reach over your shoulder, perhaps you can even touch the top part of the shoulder blade as you do this. And you find that the It's almost like a ridge. If you can find that, and then you'll feel as you lower the shoulder blade itself goes down. Okay, just do what's comfortable. And of course, as we lower the shoulder, if the shoulder blade's going down, what's happening to your collarbone? Can you feel the collarbone as well? And using the hand just gives us a little bit more feedback and a little bit more input so that we can more easily create a picture in our brain of these different areas. Right. So keep sliding down the shoulder and then see whether you can feel if there's any concertinaing, any coming together of the ribs underneath that shoulder as you slide it downwards. Do you change weight at all on your bottom as you slide the shoulder down? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Just see whether you do or not. No? Yes? Okay, let's let go of that shoulder. Let's take a little walk by way of a rest. Sitting is, we can get very static when we're sitting. Obviously, a lot of us are doing that a lot of the time. And actually, I think this lesson is very helpful for freeing up our shoulders and our back when we're in sitting, no matter whether we're a musician or not, in fact. So as you walk, just see whether you can feel if that shoulder moves any differently in walking than the other one. Okay. And then come back to your chair. And what if we slip the shoulder up and down? Can you join the two movements? We're going to use the same shoulder. So you slide it downwards towards your pelvis, and then you take it upwards towards your ear. And you're just looking not so much at how far you can possibly take it, but look at the quality of how it moves. And we judge quality by smoothness. So how fluid is that movement? Can you find a pathway up and down that avoids the speed bumps, that avoids those little knots? And feel if it's a straight line. Maybe it's more of an arc or more of a wiggle. And we do all of this in order to really look at the habits of how we move ourselves and to get acquainted with them. So the more we know about how we move and what we're doing, then the more options we have to decide whether this is a useful way of moving or whether we could choose something different. But in order to choose something different, we need to A, know what we're doing, and B, create some different options, which is hopefully what we're going to do now. Great. So let's let go of that shoulder. And for a moment, I'd like you to just come back to thinking about your bottom. So can you feel the chair that you're sitting on? Are you sat on your sitting bones? Can you feel the length of your leg bones, your femur? And could you shift your weight a little right and left? And just notice how that changes the weight of your pelvis on the chair. So you go to one side and then the other side. And when do you go through the middle? Can you go slow enough that you can really sense that center? Do you go further to one side than the other? If so, what's stopping you moving further on the other side? What's limiting you? Can you bring your attention into your back and feel? Do you breathe as you change side or as you do this? Just allow yourself to breathe and feel how as you go to one side, it's like the other side has to let go. So as you go to the right, can the left let go? As you go to the left, can the right let go? And where do you do that letting go? Is it in the back? Is it in the belly? Does it have any relationship to the shoulders? Okay, so come back to the middle, pause for a moment. And what I'd like you to try now is to use your foot to help you press one sitting bone more into the floor. So if I push with my right foot, I can lift the right buttock and I can press my left buttock more into the chair. Is that easy? And then you come back to both buttocks, both sitting bones, and then just do that a few times. You push with the right foot and you press the left sitting bone more into the floor. You're lifting the right buttock. And just feel what happens to your spine. Does your spine move as you do that? Or do you take the whole of your head with you to the side that your weight moves to? So if you think about it, we could think about it as you move your spine like a tree trunk, it stays static, or you allow your spine to curve more like something bendy. That was very eloquent. So, and then we're going to join these two movements together in a moment. So let's try it first, pushing with the other foot. So if you push with your left foot to take your weight over to the right buttock, you lift the left buttock. Just do that a few times. Feeling, first of all, just get the hang of the movement to start with, because it's not particularly one we do every day for most of us. So feel how if you had a line where your pelvis was, you're lifting one side of the line. What happens in the ribs? Is there any continuing of the ribs? Do your ribs get closer to each other on one side? And if they get closer on one side, does that mean the other side is elongating? What if you alternate, going left, pushing with one foot, taking your weight across, then pushing with the other foot? And again, stay within a comfortable range. Don't need to go right to the edge of possibility. You want to stay within somewhere that's easy. And check in again with your breathing. Are you breathing? Are you holding your breath? Are you holding anything around your jaw? It's often a place we hold tension, isn't it? Could you soften your jaw? What about your tongue or your throat? Many of us hold tension very clearly in the tongue and the throat. Could you let go of anything that's not actually helping you do this particular movement? Could you soften in the chest to allow this to move the ribs? Is there anything you could soften in the back? What about the belly? Could you make your belly soft? So that the pressure is coming from the feet, like through the bones of your skeleton, in and pushing up the pelvis. And then we think in Feldenkrais, we like to think skeletally, because that's really your structure. So that's why I'm asking so many questions about your ribs and talking about the bones, because actually the muscles need to be in service of the bones, not the other way around. We move the muscles in order to move our bones around. Great. So have a little rest, maybe go for another little walk. See whether that rocking of the pelvis has changed anything about the way that you walk or that your walking feels. What do you notice? Great, and then come back to the chair. Have your feet flat on the floor once again. Let's come back to the raising and lowering of that first shoulder. So you just raise it a little bit and then lower and alternate that movement and repeat it. And bring your attention downwards below the shoulder to your ribs. After all, that's what supports the shoulder. Like your shoulders literally live on top of the ribs. Stay with the same one just for now. I want to give you the experience of a very different feeling between the two sides before we do the second side. And so you're still on the first shoulder. Great. And feel, maybe even put your palm on your stomach just above your belly button. And feel as you lower the shoulder, does your hand move in any direction? Maybe have the opposite. It's interesting you both take the same shoulder. Use the opposite hand to the shoulder that you're moving. It's going to be less influenced. Okay. Let go of the shoulder. Could you lift the same side of the pelvis? Just keep your hand where it is. Lift the same buttock. So you're pushing with your, I'm going to call it your first side. So your first foot. It's the same side as the shoulder that you started to work with. And feel, where does the middle of yourself go? Does it move across? And perhaps you can send your attention to the back of yourself opposite your hands and feel, what's your spine doing? Does it change its shape? Does it curve in some way as you push with the foot and lift that buttock? And you're pushing down with the foot that's below the shoulder that you've been moving. Just to check in with that. Okay, so let go of the hands, take a little rest in sitting for a moment. I'll explain what I'm going to ask you to do now. So what I'd like you to do is to slide your shoulder downwards. So perhaps you can even just feel your hand going down. Allow your arm to hang, and then at the same time I want you to push with the foot so that the pelvis comes upwards towards the shoulder as your shoulder goes down towards the pelvis. Yeah, does that make? So go very slowly. You don't need to do it fast. Just get the coordination. So you're pushing up towards the shoulder that you're lowering, and you're lowering the shoulder towards the side of the pelvis that you're pushing up. And here you can probably feel your ribs are busy, right? They're working in, and they're getting closer to each other on the side that you're sliding down. Great. And what if you did it the other way? So you lift the shoulder as you push up with the foot. So you lift the shoulder, you push up with the foot. Does this feel more comfortable, more known to you? So let's say I'm using my left shoulder, I push with the left foot in order to raise the hip, and I raise the shoulder at the same time. Can we alternate? Could we do one push with the foot where you raise the shoulder, one push with the foot where you lower the shoulder? Feel how differently the ribs have to work. And you're just doing it in your speed, however slow you need to do it. Be gentle. Stay within a range of movement that's comfortable for you. Okay, great. Let's have a little rest for a moment. Let's try adding a little bit more if you're okay with that. So what I'd like you to do is to put your hand of your first shoulder on top of your head so that the elbow goes out to the side. That's it. So it's right on the top. And you're gluing your hand to your head. So that's going to stay, your hand will stay connected to your head no matter what you do. So now what I'd like you to do is just lower the shoulder. And of course you'll need to lower your elbow with it. Just go very gently, just what feels safe and comfortable for you. That's it. And repeat that movement a few times. Feel how when we add the head into this movement, so we lower the elbow down towards the pelvis, which takes the shoulder downwards, and then up, and repeat that movement. Perhaps you can feel how that asks for a reciprocal curving of your spine. So it's like before, when we were lifting the buttocks, you're making a curve of the spine from the bottom of your spine. And here with the hand on the head, there's more a curving of the spine from the top. Can you feel your ribs opening and closing? And just check in with your breathing as well. Check in around your mouth, your jaw. Make sure you're not holding anything extra. Can your belly be soft? The next time your head's in the middle, just very slowly lift your hand, bring your arm down, and go for another walk by way of a rest. And I'm aware we've done a lot on one side, so perhaps that's showing up, or perhaps that will show up when you walk. Can you feel a difference in the way that you almost stack the joints on top of each other as you move? So obviously as we walk, we remove the pressure through the foot, through the bones of the leg, into your pelvis, through the spine and the ribs, into the shoulder girdle, and all the way up to your head. Does that pathway feel different on the two sides of yourself? Lovely. And then when you're ready, let's come back to the chair and do a little bit of, do some work on the other side so you don't get left lopsided. So let's start with the shoulder, if we may. So we're going to go to your second shoulder. Now, it could be that you chose your freer shoulder to start with. So just honor the fact that maybe one shoulder moves less than the other, but instead be more curious about where does its quality lie. You know, a bit like when you have sisters or brothers or daughters, you know, you love them differently but the same. You know, they're different. We just honor that. So we will have differences within the sides because most of us aren't ambidextrous. We use our dominant hand side of the body very differently to our non-dominant side. So let's try just beginning with raising your second shoulder towards your ear. And again, see whether you can Sense the shoulder blade at the back sliding over the ribs. Is it easier to go up or is it easier to go down? See whether you can stay within, let's say, 80% of your range. So as we go towards the edge of our range, very often you'll feel the texture of the movement changing. Perhaps it gets a little thicker, more like you're pushing through treacle rather than water. So see where's the most fluid part of the movement and where does it start to thicken? Can you sense your collarbone rising and falling along with the shoulder? Do you feel free to use your hand if you found that useful on the other side to outline the collarbone to help you have a more three-dimensional image in your brain of the whole of your shoulder girdle? So that's the collarbone, the shoulder blade, and the top of your arm bone. How much movement is there in the ribs below this shoulder girdle? What we also probably need to know about the shoulder girdle is that the place where it goes into the core of yourself, into your rib cage and your spine, is only at the front. It's just attached in the jugular notch that you were feeling earlier. That's the only attachment, skeletal attachment for the shoulders. The rest is all tendons and muscle and fascia. So fascia being everything that isn't bone. People use that word different ways, so I like to just qualify that. So often when we move the shoulder in a generous way, you may even start to feel your sternum moving. And if you wanted to bring your fingers to the sternum to help you sense that, so the sternum is this dagger-shaped piece of bone that goes in between the breasts and in between the ribs. It joins the ribs via cartilage, but to the center of yourself in the front to create that structure that's both safe, it's protecting your most important organs, the lungs and the heart, but it also has mobility. Begin sliding the shoulder downwards towards the pelvis. Perhaps you can still follow the direction that your collarbone makes, your shoulder blades. And feel how as you slide the shoulder downwards, the ribs need to also move towards each other in order to assist. Otherwise, if the ribs didn't move, if they weren't able to move, then there'd only be a very limited range of movement for the shoulder. And in fact, we had ribs before we had lungs. Ribs come from our evolutionary process of being amphibians. And so actually the ribs are very much designed for movement. You think of how a snake moves, it's moving those ribs in and out to motor along. And we can do that too. And in fact, we need to be able to do some of that in order to have the full range of the shoulder. Great. Let's bring the pelvis into this. Let's make it a bigger movement pattern. Do you need another walk, a little break before we do that? Do you not? Yep. Okay. Rachel's off. So as we get more experience in Feldenkrais, then very much we get better at knowing when we need a break, and being autonomous of that, rather than suffering through or waiting until there's a general pause. And that's really part of what I was asking you to do at the beginning, of really looking for this comfortable range of movement. Like, how can we best take care of ourselves and look after our needs as well as everybody else's, but have that sense of, what do I need to find this useful and not overdo things. Okay, great. I think this is probably my favorite part of this lesson just coming up. So what I'd like you to do now is let's combine the shoulders with the hips. So could you allow both arms to hang downwards on the two sides? And then can you slide one shoulder down and that same side of the pelvis up? And then you swap over sides of the shoulders and the pelvis. So you're bringing one shoulder and hip towards each other, and you shift your weight to the other side, and then you bring the other shoulder and hip towards each other and shift the weight to the other side. That's it. Go slowly, take your speed, what you need to do. And hopefully you can feel your concertinaing on both sides as you take the hip up and the shoulder downwards. Can you follow the contraction of both sides of the ribs? How does your spine need to move to help this? Allow your spine to curve. And then could you follow the side of yourself that's elongating? So that's the side where you're moving your body weight to. The shoulder that's coming upwards. So you're pushing up with the foot as you slide the shoulder down each time. So you push the foot up, you push the foot in order to raise the pelvis up, and you slide that shoulder down. So your weight will go to the other side. And then you switch sides. Great. Go gently, easily. Can you swap over what you're doing with the bottom? So you take the shoulder down and then you lift the other side of the pelvis. So we just give you a little coordination puzzle for your brain to work out. And it's in those moments of confusion where you're doing something that you've never done before that we can find just new ways of moving. How can you do this easily, as if you were the lazy kid at the back of the class who really didn't care what the teacher had to say? How can you do the minimum? That's it. Nice. How can it still feel nice? Can it? What would you need to do to move in a way where you liked the way it felt, even doing this strange movement? Go back to the other version, if you can. So you're going to push with the foot in order to raise that side of the pelvis. The side of the pelvis that you're raising, you're lowering that shoulder. That's great. Exactly. And see whether you can allow your ear to follow the movement of the shoulder. If that feels a little unsafe, then what you're going to do is you're going to bring one of your hands on top of your head. So this way we make a little frame for the head and the neck. And so if you have your hand on top of the head, the elbows out to the side, and then you just allow your elbow to go down as you lift that shoulder, and then your elbow goes up as you lift the other shoulder. And you can probably feel that there's an opening and closing in a slightly different part of your ribcage. Be gentle, go soft, remember to breathe. Swap over the arms. Let's try it with the other arm. And if you find yourself getting frustrated or you're trying really hard, just pause for a moment and stop. Just reset. Reset yourself back to the lazy kid version. How lazy can you be? How little effort can you put in and get a result out? So very much we're looking all the time in Feldenkrais for how can we be more ergonomic? How can we be more efficient in what we're doing? So, how can we lessen tension in places where it doesn't add to the movement that we're doing? Great. Yes, exactly. Bring your arm down, go for a walk. See whether it feels different to walk now. And obviously in this lesson, we're only looking at side bending and sitting. And so we have thousands of lessons in Feldenkrais where we cover essentially all the possible biomechanical movements of the human body over time. Obviously, that takes time to go through. And like any mindfulness practice, because we are in the business of improving attention and your awareness, it takes time for you to feel benefits that are tangible and maintainable, that you can keep the learning that you've learned. So, and studies have shown it takes about 8 weeks of regular practice. So I'm going to suggest that you come back to your instrument now, and let's just see, is there a difference? Perhaps in the sound, how it feels. You're going to tell me hopefully afterwards. Great. So if that was long enough, then do come back to the screen. And given that there's just a few of each day live, if you'd like to share how that was for you, I'd be very curious to hear. Jenny.
Yeah, it felt open actually, and soft rather than, quite often it can, you're preparing to play, you aim to stay sort of soft in your approach, but you can get a bit sort of tense with it. But it did actually feel, it just came out. It just sort of, it felt effortless actually.
Wow.
Yeah, it really, I just sort of picked it up and it just felt easier.
Wow. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Great. That's what we aim for. That we reduce stuff, so we reduce all the tension or the movements that we do that are in the way, that we don't actually need. And so hopefully whatever we're doing can feel more effortless. So, but how was it for you, Rachel? Maybe you have a different experience of that.
I've had repetitive strain from my neck for like a couple of years, and it's really hampered my piano playing. So I've kind of not done that much of it. Anyway, at the beginning, I could feel, because it's all tied up with emotion and everything, I could feel, even before I started, when you said we were going to play, I could feel that tension coming. It's still there, but at the end, when I played just now, I could feel that there was strength actually in my fingers, and it was flowing better through my fingers. So I wasn't as tight up here. I wasn't as concentrated on this. I was more kind of going with the flow. It flowed better. But as I say, there was definitely more strength, and I felt my fingers were doing what they should be doing as a piano player. So yeah, it's exciting. It's really exciting. I think more work to be done, but definitely. Thank you, Emma.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And I think it's really interesting, isn't it? You talking about fingers. We can think of fingers and as separate from the rest of us often, but our fingers obviously are connected through the arms into the shoulders, and our shoulders rest on top of this framework of our rib cage and the spine. And then obviously our pelvis, well, not maybe obviously, our pelvis is our motor center. It really supports everything. So when we're in a position where we're more mobile, where our ribs and our pelvis and our spine can support the shoulders more, then through the shoulders, they also can help the fingers feel their strength or their mobility or whatever it is that we need them to feel. So.
Emma, can I just say thank you so much? That's really, really interesting, and I definitely want to kind of follow on with it. Really, I've had lots of recently shoulder and neck problems, where I've been getting a lot of pain. It's the radial nerve.
Mm-hmm.
And I get the pain here when I'm holding my elbow, and actually when I picked it up there just now, I just didn't feel it.
Great.
It's really interesting, and yeah, I'm going to look into it.
Brilliant. Oh, well, I'm really pleased. And I've worked with quite a few oboists in the past. And one of them was actually, she was a multi-instrumentalist. So that was every lesson she would bring me another instrument for me to try and help her be more comfortable with. So that was really a learning curve for both of us. But it is really interesting, I think, how can we get more and more comfortable with our instruments? And sometimes I think we just need an exterior view. We can't see our own habits from the inside because we can't think other than the way that we think until we have another option. So.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Emma, and thank you, Jenny and Rachel, for joining. I'm so glad that you had such great experiences with Emma today. Thank you everybody for watching. If you're interested in booking your own session with Emma, please do go along to musicalorbit.com, where you can find her page and book a one-to-one online or in person, hopefully shortly, when the COVID restrictions are lifted. So thank you very much.